Welcome to episode 25 of the Ask the Law Firm Seller Show. My name is Jeremy Poock and I lead Senior Attorney Match. In today's Ask Show, we'll have two segments. We'll have a Q&A segment and we'll also have our Pook's Post. And just as a preview for today's Pook's Post, we'll address why the rewards outweigh the risks when it comes to growth by acquisition. All right, so let's go into our first segment, Q&A. What's our first question today? Our first question today is, why should growing law firms pursue growth by acquisition? Great, thank you. When it comes to growing law firms, what we find is that growing law firms share the following three needs when it comes to their interest to boost the growth of their firms. First and foremost, they need new clients. Secondly, is they need an experienced workforce, talented lawyers and support staff. And third, now that we are in the 3.0 digital era for the legal industry, growing law firms need digital content to attract the attention of today's and tomorrow's clients who continue to look online for lawyers and law firms to hire. So when it comes to how senior attorney-led firms can benefit growing law firms, when growing law firms are looking to boost that growth, First and foremost, senior attorney-led firms offer to growing law firms their books of business. That is, today's senior attorney-led firms, which are led by one or more founding attorneys that have practiced typically 30 or more years, those attorneys, those law firms, senior attorney-led firms, have developed books of business literally over decades. Those books of business are filled with the clients and referral sources that growing law firms want and need. And via growth by acquisition or growth by merger, growing law firms literally in an instant can experience instant client growth by acquiring that hard-earned book of business that senior attorney-led firms have developed over the course of a career. In addition, when it comes to growth by acquisition or just growth generally, right? Law firms do not have machines, at least not yet, that crank out the work, right? We need talented lawyers and support staff. So as growing law firms are considering that second need that they have, which is an experienced workforce, senior attorney-led firms check the box on that need as well. And what we're showing here is that, and what we're really seeing in the marketplace, is that today's senior attorneys who are typically in their late 50s, 60s, and into their 70s, they share a commonality for the most part. That is, they've developed a law firm, right? They've got clients and referral sources, and those senior attorneys are considering selling. And at some point, they inform their key employee lawyers that they're thinking about selling in the next, let's say, 2 to 4 years. Well, how does that land with those key employee lawyers? Typically like a ton of bricks, and not in a good way. That is, that they're typically thinking to themselves that what they want is a reliable, predictable, and safe job. They're more interested in making sure that they're going to get an increase in salary the following year, a bonus this year. They've got student loan debt that they still need to pay. They are thinking about how to pay off their mortgage, save for their kids' education, save for their own retirement. So when it comes to growth by acquisition, we're really saying this is a chocolate and peanut butter opportunity. That is, senior attorneys are thinking about how do they sell? How do they transition their law firms? The internal would-be successors, that is key employee lawyers, they do not want to purchase the firm. So that's really the chocolate. When it comes to the peanut butter, right, that's growing law firms. They need the talented senior attorneys who typically are not looking to retire right away. They want to continue practicing, but they also want to finally be able to take a break, take 3 weeks off, spend a couple of months. We sit in the Northeast here and want to take a couple of months off and be in the Southeast in Florida in the wintertime, be able to travel, not have to worry about paying rent, making payroll. And when growing law firms are thinking, how can they increase their workforce by acquiring or merging with a senior attorney-led firm? Again, that chocolate and peanut butter growing law firms can offer to senior attorneys. Come retire with us, work at the pace you want to work at. To the key employee lawyers that you don't want to purchase, your boss's law firm and you can't afford to either, come join us. We will pay your salary. We will offer you benefits. We will give you the vacation time that you want, bonus structure that you need. So again, growing law firms and senior attorney-led firms, chocolate and peanut butter, check that box in terms of what growing law firms need an experienced workforce. Senior attorney-led firms offer that as well. And then when it comes to digital marketing, growing law firms today, really post 2020, when the world shifted in so many ways, but one of the biggest pivots, right? Going back to that word from 2020, one of the biggest pivots societally and in the legal industry is the digital pivot, where we shop for everything and anything online. We search for everything and anything online, whether we're searching Google or we're starting to move towards ChatGPT. We rely on our digital devices to really advise us about whom we should hire as a professional service provider, and that applies to lawyers and law firms as well. Hence, growing law firms need to attract the attention of today's and tomorrow's would-be clients digitally. And when it comes to senior attorney-led firms, those firms offer literally 3 treasure chests of potential digital content that growing law firms want and need. And those 3 chests consist of, first, Google reviews, right? Every law firm today needs to be adding more and more Google reviews because, again, as a society where we are searching for everything digitally, we're looking for that social proof, whether we are buying a new microwave oven, a new pair of sneakers, or we're thinking of hiring a lawyer, right? The consumer, the client wants to review what others think of you, what others think of your firm, what others think of lawyers at your firm. If we think about those senior attorney-led firms that have hundreds, often thousands of satisfied clients that they have not reached out to yet and asked for those Google reviews, despite the fact that the clients really like their lawyers. They've been satisfied by their lawyers for years. So when senior attorneys and their lawyers join growing law firms, offers a treasure chest and of opportunity for hundreds, if not even 1,000 plus 5-star Google reviews. Second is what we call untapped digital content, right? You're a growing law firm. You need to be publishing to multiple channels of social media today to get the attention of those clients that want to know, like, and trust lawyers and law firms before they hire them. Well, senior attorneys and the lawyers at their firms, what have they developed over the course of their careers? Subject matter knowledge, deep subject matter knowledge. And that subject matter knowledge is untapped in terms of a treasure chest of digital content. That is the opportunity to convert subject matter knowledge into digital content in the form of regular and often posts to LinkedIn, e-newsletters via Constant Contact, videos explaining legal concepts, whether that's in sophisticated or preferably in layman's terms. But you know that information, that is the senior attorneys and the lawyers of their firms know the subject matter knowledge because they're explaining it to would-be and current clients all the time. That can translate into YouTube videos, fake Facebook posts, Instagram posts, podcasts, blogs, right? What we're seeing is that growing law firms have marketing departments, and those marketing departments are hungry for digital content. Senior attorney-led firms offer that treasure chest of untapped digital content. The third treasure chest that senior attorney-led firms offer to growing law firms from a digital standpoint is a boost to the goodwill of their websites, right? Like, anybody that is searching for a law firm finds them online at some point relatively soon in, call it, the purchase process, is going to look at the bios for the lawyers at the firm. And here, what do senior attorney-led firms offer? First and foremost, the senior attorneys themselves. They often have an amazing curriculum vitae, right? That is, they were in all likelihood heads of bar associations, leaders in their communities. They often are involved in multiple charities. They have often won great cases, written great articles, and to add that level of goodwill instantly to the bios of your law firms is going to land very well with clients today who are not asking their brother, their sister, their accountant, their physical therapist, for a referral to lawyers. That's happening, of course, but by and large, what we're saying often is that Uncle Google is America's greatest referral source. And if that's the case, and people are going on Google, finding a website, doing their own search, they want and need to see the experienced lawyers at a firm and know that that firm, those lawyers have been there, done that, they do it successfully, and senior attorneys and the attorneys at their firms offer that treasure chest of goodwill in the terms of bios that can be added to a growing law firm's website to attract the attention and really to proverbially seal the deal in terms of why a would-be client wants to hire that firm. So let's just look in terms of growing law firms, today's growing law firms and tomorrow's growing law firms. If you are running a firm and you're thinking about how to grow, what do you need? You need new clients. You need an experienced workforce, and you need digital content to attract the attention of today's and tomorrow's clients who are looking digitally. They're looking online before they are making a call or sending in a contact form or a text to a law firm that they want to hire. Senior attorney-led firms check all of those boxes by offering the book of business that senior attorneys have developed over the course of their careers. They have lawyers and the senior attorneys themselves that can add to that experienced workforce, plus parastaff, and they offer literally treasure chests of digital content to growing law firms. Okay, so for our next question today. Our next question is, why should senior attorney-led firms consider selling or merging with a growing law firm in the mid-2020s? Okay, so here we are in the mid-2020s, heading towards 2030. The writing is on the wall to senior attorney-led firms. That is, attorneys and law firms that have been in practice for 30 plus years. The writing is on the wall that today's clients search for their lawyers online. Most senior attorneys built their practices pre-Google. In that pre-Google era, so much of business development depended upon word of mouth. We call that the age of the rainmaker attorney. I vividly remember the rainmaker attorneys just going to networking events and just seeing these attorneys. I mean, it was like watching a beautiful dance. Like they're just dancing around the room, handing out business cards, slapping backs, smiling, laughing, and generating a ton of business. Well, now in the post-2020 era, unfortunately, for those rainmaker attorneys, we're now in what we call the age of the vanishing rainmaker, because instead of would-be clients asking their neighbor, their friend, their brother, their sister, their accountant, their gym buddy, whomever, for who do they recommend. Instead, we're going right to our mobile devices or right to our iPads or right to our laptops or other form of digital device. And we're looking online for who is the best attorney that can meet my fill in the blank need. And that writing on the wall is that because clients are searching online for attorneys today, that the rainmakers of yesteryear are not generating as many clients as they did in yesteryear. So now let's look at that from the standpoint of why did that even happen? Okay, the reason why we are in this age of the vanishing rainmaker is because business development for law firms fundamentally changed post 2020. And the reason why is because of a shift in consumer behavior, right? Whereas consumers previously would rely on word of mouth, as did the rainmakers for developing business, post 2020, the consumers, that is, would-be clients of law firms, they are going straight to Uncle Google and they're asking Google for the recommendation, right? We're saying that Google is America's greatest referral source, also America's greatest rainmaker. And by the way, ChatGPT is not necessarily in second place yet, but people are certainly searching AI as well for recommendations for lawyers and law firms to hire. Beyond that, we're relying more and more on social proof when it comes to posts to social media as well as endorsements on social media. We're looking for five-star, that is, clients are looking for five-star Google reviews. They want to see that lawyers are active on LinkedIn, they're active on Facebook. How many podcasts can we listen to for an attorney or law firm that we're considering to hire, so that we, as a would-be client, that we can know, like, and trust an attorney or a law firm before considering to hire them. And for those law firms that are investing in multi-channel digital marketing, they're attracting more clients than those typically senior attorney-led firms that are maintaining a website-only word-of-mouth type approach, who are just generating less clients than they did in yesteryear. And from the standpoint of when should senior attorneys know that now is the right time to consider selling their law firms, let's just look at that all-important book of business. So when it comes to selling a law firm, the number one asset when you're selling your law firm is your book of business, right? Because regardless of the era that we're in, and we're now in what we call the 3.0 digital era, because of the basis for how clients are looking for lawyers, right? Clients will always be the energy source for law firms, right? Every law firm needs new clients. And the value of any selling firm is, how many clients do you have? And how many clients are you regularly continuing to generate? And if your firm is generating less clients in the post 2020 era because you're not investing in digital marketing to attract new clients, and if you're seeing that your firm is not generating as many clients as you did in the pre-Google word of mouth era, then now is the right time to sell. Because if your book of business is not regenerating as much as it did in yesteryear, then it's going to continue, unfortunately, not to regenerate as many new clients. And as time goes on, as the book of business does not develop as many new clients as it did in the past, the firm is going to become less valuable. Hence, if you're seeing that pattern with your firm, that is a telltale sign to consider selling or merging with a growing law firm that wants and needs your clients and your referral sources. Now let's look at when it can become almost too late to be able to sell your law firm. Is when a random Tuesday event could happen with regard to your key employees. So wait a second. We just said that the most valuable asset of your firm is your clients. So you could have a book of business that's filled with clients. Hooray, that's amazing. Okay. But here's the second aspect in terms of how law firms work, as we all know. A, you need the clients, and B, you need the lawyers and the para staff to actually do the work until AI completely replaces us. And let's hope that doesn't happen, but we all know it's starting to happen a bit. But regardless, even those law firms, senior attorney-led firms that can offer a filled book of business to a growing firm, what we've seen in the marketplace is that growing firms will sometimes say no thanks if you do not have the lawyers and para staff to join the growing firm together with the senior attorney to continue representing the clients, representing those clients in that book of business, as well as be able to represent clients of the acquiring growing law firm. And when we say that when could it be almost too late to sell your law practice, is in the event that a random Tuesday event happens where key employee lawyers of your firm leave your firm, because if the number of new clients that you generate goes down, your key employee lawyers are going to get nervous. Why? Because they aspire for what? They aspire to have a reliable, predictable, and safe job. And if they become concerned that their job has become less reliable, less predictable, and less safe, they may, on a random Tuesday, walk down the hall, one or more of them walk down to the hall to their boss, and say, you know what? I decided to take another job, and I'm giving you only 2 or 4 weeks notice. Folks, this happens in the marketplace. It's a sucker punch to the owner of the firm, who literally carried these people for often years, if not decades. but it happens because if they are seeing that that book of business is not replenishing and they think that their job security is potentially jeopardized, then they could very well offer on a random Tuesday event their resignation with only 2 or 4 weeks notice. So when it comes to recognizing that it's time to sell your law firm, what we recommend to lawyers that are leading senior attorney led firms when they are considering selling their law firms, the best opportunity that we regularly see in the marketplace is to sell to a growing law firm. And what we're showing here is that when senior attorneys recognize that it is time to sell their law firms, and again, we recommend that the barometer for that be when your book of business is not growing at the same pace as it did in yesteryear, that is the telltale for it is time to consider selling or merging with a growing law firm, because we find that growing law firms want and need senior attorney led firms because growing firms want and need new clients. They need your experienced workforce, that is your key employee lawyers that don't want to purchase your practice and can't afford to. Well, they would love to join a growing law firm. A growing law firm wants and needs them because they need the lawyers to continue doing the work. And growing law firms need digital content and the subject matter knowledge that senior attorney led firms have developed over the course of decades presents literally treasure chests of digital content that the subject matter knowledge can be converted into digital content to attract the attention of would-be clients. Now let's look at why it is that senior attorneys can challenge, can resist selling or merging with a growing law firm. Besides inertia itself, which in and of itself is a very powerful, let's call it emotion, right? We are often talking with senior attorneys and they're asking us when is the right time to sell, and their thought is, well, if today's like yesterday, and tomorrow's not going to be that much different than today, then I should just continue plugging away. Okay, and then we can go through an analysis and show, well, wait a second, you're not generating as many new clients as you used to. It's possible that your key employee lawyers, because you just celebrated your 67th birthday, they don't want to purchase your practice. They could bolt, which would make your law practice less valuable. Inertia can hold back a seller from wanting to sell. So let's just say we get over the inertia hurdle. Here are 3 additional reasons. Or really what we're going to do is debunk these 3 additional reasons that can hold senior attorneys back from what is really beneficial to them, their key employee lawyers, and their clients. So we call this really debunking the 3 fears that prevent senior attorneys from joining growing law firms. That first fear that we find that senior attorneys have is the fear of having a new boss, right? We're recommending that you could join a growing law firm, sell your practice, merge your practice with a growing firm. The first knee-jerk reaction is that, oh my goodness, all of a sudden I'm going to have a boss, some 35-year-old, 42-year-old that's going to tell me that I've got to bill 2,000 billable hours like all over again when I was 26 years old. That does not happen in the marketplace. Why? Because when senior attorneys walk through the door on the first day, the second year, they have a sticker on their lapel that says, hello, I provide instant client growth to this firm, right? You have that book of business. Because you're bringing over the book of business, there is never, and I guess never say never, hardly ever any kind of expectation about the number of billable hours that you have to work, the number of days you have to work. You are bringing over that all important asset that growing law firms need, the book of business. You will not have a boss when you join a growing law firm. The second fear is that you're going to lose control of the day-to-day management of your life, right? I mean, you join a firm, even if you're not going to have a boss, the concern is that, well, I have to put a tie on again if I'm a man, or I have to dress a certain way if I'm a woman, or I have to be at the office certain hours. I've got to attend certain meetings. And it's really an interesting fear that senior attorneys have there, because the biggest pain in the butt that we hear from senior attorneys that really can't stand managing the office. But again, in some respects, that comes back to the inertia piece, because the concern is that once you join a firm, all right, you're just going to be subject to a new structure. And even though you couldn't stand the old structure, at least you were in control of that old structure. So throw that fear out the door, please, because when you're no longer managing the office, your own office, you're going to gain greater control by joining a growing law firm, because they are not going to require you to all of a sudden work in the office, dress a certain way. Maybe you have to attend certain meetings, yes, but by and large, it goes back to that all important book of business. And what we are regularly seeing is that senior attorneys can continue to practice remotely, make their own hours, take vacations as long as they want, because what growing law firms, what they need is that book of business, and that you, as the owner of the firm, offer what we call trust transfer. You're transferring the trust of your clients to lawyers at the firm that you join, and for that reason, the lack of control of your day-to-day life is not impacted, because you're in charge of transferring the trust of those all important clients and referral sources to the lawyers and law firms that you would join. The third fear, and this is significant, okay, is the identity wrapped up in owning your own firm, right? That is, so many senior attorneys, for better or for worse, they consider the office as, I don't know if I should call it the second home, but I think we all know what those two words mean, right? The office. I'm going to the office. I'll be at the office. Tomorrow, I've got to go back to the office, right? It's tied in with the identity of senior attorney law firm owners. And so when we're recommending that now is really the right time for you to sell, because your book of business is going down, it's possible that your key employee lawyers could leave on a random Tuesday. Well, what am I going to do as the owner if I'm going to lose my identity by no longer being the boss? And here, the answer to that, the debunking of that fear, is that rather than having the office be your identity, joining a growing law firm allows you as the owner to leave a legacy, right? You're leaving a legacy in terms of you're taking care of your clients. Your clients are joining a firm that has a deep bench of lawyers that can continue to zealously and competently represent your clients. Secondly, you're leaving a legacy of taking care of your support staff, your lawyers and your para staff. They depend upon you for a job, right? Your most growing law firms, they want your lawyers, they want your support staff, because they need that experienced workforce. So that legacy is secured. Third is, what we find is many senior attorneys, they love sharing the knowledge that they've developed over the course of their careers. You join a growing law firm, there's new lawyers, new para staff. You can share that information, and the ways to practice the right way, or the ways that you've learned, the tricks of the trade that you've learned over the years, that you can share with lawyers, with support staff, with colleagues, with clients. That's also part of the legacy. And the fourth part of the legacy is the marketing value. We find that many senior attorneys, they enjoy marketing. And by joining growing law firms, they're able to actually do more business development. They're able to finally enter into the digital marketing world. They realized at some point that they weren't going to invest in it themselves. It wasn't going to be their niece, wasn't going to be their granddaughter that was going to get them into multi-channel digital marketing. Join a firm that is committed to multi-channel digital marketing. All of a sudden, you can be publishing videos to YouTube, and podcasts that you can be recording, blogs that you can be writing, e-newsletters, and so forth. So the message here is that, yes, there are some fears involved with joining a growing law firm, but when you can shift from having the office as your identity to leaving a legacy that is for the benefit of so many others as well as yourself, we highly recommend that senior attorneys in the mid-2020s consider joining growing law firms that want and need them, especially if you're not developing as many new clients as you did in the pre-Google word of mouth era. And now finally, let's look at what the payment terms are. So when senior attorneys are considering selling their law firms to growing law firms, an additional significant benefit is it provides you a pathway to monetize your law practice. What we're finding is that when senior attorneys join growing law firms, they continue practicing for a number of years and negotiate terms for how they can be paid as they continue to practice. And then, very importantly, on that all important book of business, how is that monetized? What we're seeing in what we call law firm sales 1.0 is that when you are transitioning your book of business, your clients and your referral sources to the lawyers at growing law firms, which can very well include lawyers from your firm that join that firm, that the consideration is structured as an earnout. That is, that you're being paid a percentage of the revenues that is derived from your book of business, paid over a negotiated period of time, which often happens during your retirement years. Hence, you're able to monetize, annuitize that all important book of business that you've worked so hard over the course of your career to develop. Okay, so for today's third question, our next question is, what if I am not ready to sell, but want to better monetize referring matters to trusted colleagues? So we're often saying to our clients that you have three options when it comes to selling a law firm. You could structure an internal sale. You could sell your law practice to a growing law firm, or you can maintain your status quo. As we've been thinking through those three options, there's really a 3.5 or a subset to the status quo. That is, if you're not ready to sell your law firm, yet you've developed great goodwill, you get calls from clients on a regular basis and referral sources on a regular basis asking about practice areas, that is, needs of clients in practice areas outside the scope of what your law firm offers, right? Throughout the course of your career, except for personal injury law, by and large, you probably refer those matters out to other law firms on the basis of, hey, if I scratch your back, you'll scratch mine. If I'm a divorce attorney, I send an estate planning matter out to an estate planning firm. I'm not looking for a referral fee there because the estate planning firm will at some point refer a divorce matter to me, right? I scratch yours, you scratch mine. As senior attorneys are thinking about monetizing their practices, but they're not ready to sell internally or to a growing law firm, we recommend that as a part of status quo, please consider Rule 1.5 in your state. That is Rule 1.5. Many lawyers are familiar with it, again, from the personal injury law standpoint. What it provides for is that lawyers can request and enter into referral fee terms with lawyers in other firms. Every state has their own version of Rule 1.5. Where I sit in Massachusetts, we can make a referral. We don't need to have any involvement in the given matters. Many states, including those states that follow the model rules of the professional rules of conduct, they require either each lawyer that's involved in the case, that is the generating lawyer and the lawyer to whom the matter was referred, to have some form of involvement in the firm, in the client matter, or that the referring attorney assume joint responsibility for the matter. Regardless of that, of how Rule 1.5 appears in your state's rules of professional conduct, if you follow Rule 1.5, then you, as the attorney that's generating the matter, can be negotiating with the lawyer or law firm that you are making that referral to a referral fee, whether that's 10%, 20%. Of course, in PI, it's typically a third. What we're seeing in the marketplace is somewhere between 15% to 25%. And if you're at a point in your career where that back scratching is just not going to happen as much as it did earlier in your career, yet you are generating a number of cases that you will refer out, too few lawyers rely upon and benefit from Rule 1.5. And we really recommend, as an alternative to selling your law firm, to consider, as those matters are coming into your firm, that you are referring to other competent lawyers, your colleagues, your friends, to inquire with those firms whether and how a referral fee relationship could be accomplished and satisfying Rule 1.5 by doing so. An additional benefit to establishing those referral fee relationships is that you very well may identify the firm that could become the successor to your firm. So now let's look at law firm sales 1.0, because if you start referring matters to colleagues of yours and you're seeing that those colleagues at another firm are regularly representing your clients, doing so competently, ideally, they are representing clients in those matters outside the scope of what you do. And I would say again, ideally, they are representing clients within the scope of what you do as well. The beginning of a relationship by having a referral fee relationship could very well turn into a merger or a sale to one of those firms. And what we're seeing in the marketplace is that the consideration that's paid is an earnout price, just like your referral fee terms that you're getting paid when you're referring client matters to a firm that you could eventually sell to or merge with. That firm could then agree to continue to fee share with you on your defined clients and your defined referral sources over a negotiated period of time. Just as an example, in terms of what we're often seeing in the marketplace, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% to 25% fee sharing on the revenues that come in from that defined client list and referral source. Let's call it the book of business over, let's say, a 5-year period. Okay. So for today's Poock's post, we'll address why the rewards outweigh the risks for growth by acquisition. So when it comes to growth by acquisition for growing law firms, the rewards absolutely outweigh the risks. And let's just rattle off what those rewards consist of, right? First and foremost, what growing law firms benefit by when they acquire senior attorney-led firms is instant client growth by succeeding to a well-established book of business filled with clients and referral sources. Really just drop the microphone on that, right? I mean, we work so hard as lawyers, whether we are doing traditional word of mouth type of in-person networking to generate business, or we are investing significantly in multi-channel digital marketing today by investing in Google, by investing in different social media type platforms. Those are real dollars, real time. You acquire a book of business, typically what we call a like-kind law firm, right? A firm that's doing similar type of work as the acquiring firm. You're capable of doing the work, and by acquiring that senior attorney-led firm, you are instantly growing the client base of your practice. Second reward is adding knowledgeable and experienced lawyers and power staff to your practice. That is, when you're acquiring a growing law firm, those growing law firms typically have a number of experienced lawyers and power staff. What is it that they want and need? They want and need a reliable, predictable, and safe job. And you, as the acquiring, growing law firm, you are able to add on experienced lawyers and power staff. They know the law, they know the clients, they have experience. It's a great reward for growing law firms. The next reward is, at this point in time, a low risk payment terms, because what we're seeing in the marketplace is that the payment terms for growing law firms when they are acquiring senior attorney-led firms is on an earn-out basis, because so many senior attorney-led firms, they built their practices based upon the personal goodwill of the founding senior attorneys. The growing firms will say, well, we don't know for sure that the clients are going to continue with us, the growing law firm. We are more than prepared to pay consideration for your book of business, but the book has to perform. As a result, what we're seeing, what we call law firm sales 1.0, is that growing law firms are offering earn-out terms. They're offering to pay a percentage of revenues derived from the defined book of business over a negotiated period of time. Said another way, the deals are structured typically as almost 100% seller financing, where growing law firms are often putting down little to no money up front and paying the owners of growing law firms based upon the performance of their book of business. A huge reward that is going to change. That is absolutely going to change. Is we are seeing that law firm sales 2.0 is around the corner. It's already here. When lawyers and law firms, sellers are going to be able to show that their business is derived digitally, and they're going to have data analytics to show that clients aren't coming to the firms because of the personal goodwill of a given attorney at the firm. There will be real multiples, higher multiples in law firm sales. Hence, now is a great time while the payment terms continue to be based on earnouts for growing firms to acquire senior attorney-led firms. An additional reward is the opportunities to convert decades of subject matter knowledge to digital content. Today's growing law firms, they know that they need digital content to attract the attention of today's and tomorrow's clients. Senior attorneys and the attorneys at their firms have developed treasure chests of subject matter knowledge that can be converted to digital content to attract that attention. They also have access to hundreds, maybe even 1,000 plus in some cases, 5-star Google reviews by calling on satisfied clients, asking them to provide 5-star Google reviews. Another reward, see, there's a lot of rewards. Another reward is a legacy phone number, right? Most senior attorneys, they're very well established in their communities, in their states, sometimes regionally, sometimes even nationally, and they have phone numbers that are in the marketplace. Let's say a trust and estates attorney has written, hundreds of wills. Every single will has a blue jacket on the back, has the phone number for that firm. The phone number is very valuable. That phone will continue to ring. And then another reward is the benefit of succeeding to establish websites. And for those senior attorney-led firms that are that have entered into the digital marketing era, in addition to offering established websites, they have additional digital value that they offer. SEO rankings is an example. The 5-star Google reviews, they have already accumulated 3-pack results in terms of those local results when people are Googling, I need a fill-in-the-blank attorney near me. All of that is acquired when growing law firms are acquiring senior attorney-led firms. Now, of course, as lawyers, right, we're going to recognize that there's risks involved too, right? So growing law firms, what are your risks in terms of growth by acquisition? First and foremost is, okay, are we going to overpay a seller if clients do not retain the acquiring firm? Well, Family Feud style, we can say, on that, right? Why? Because the earnout terms we mentioned before were only, at least at this point, in what we call law firm sales 1.0, growing law firms are only paying senior attorneys on the performance of that book of business. So the risk of overpaying is mitigated by the contingency factor for that the book needs to perform. Hence, the senior attorney is highly incentivized to transition clients and referral sources to the acquiring firm. Second risk is, well, we may not have enough lawyers and parastaff to provide the legal services to do the work. Okay, that's a legitimate concern, but by and large, it gets a half of an right? Why? Because the senior attorney-led firms often have lawyers and paralegals, and we're often seeing that growing law firms they should recognize the value of hiring all of the above. Hire the lawyers, hire the parastaff, because you're going to need them to continue representing the needs of the book of business that a senior attorney-led firm presents. And then lastly is the costs of adding overhead, right? That is that if we're taking on this senior attorney-led firm, we're taking on the overhead, the growing firm's taking on the overhead of salaries, benefits, additional rent. That one also, yes, it's legit, gets also a half of an Why? Because the risk here, an assumed risk, which unfortunately too many growing law firms just sort of assume, that the clients aren't going to come over. The clients come over, right? So any overhead that you're going to be assuming is going to be mitigated, is going to be paid by that same revenues that the senior attorney-led firm generated to pay its overhead costs, right? The money is still going to be coming in. The revenues are still coming in from the clients to pay that overhead and to also, of course, set up growing law firms to increase their profitability, increase the revenues, increase the opportunity for them to expand and do so via growth by acquisition. And that is episode 25 of the Ask the Law Firm Seller Show.